This Velcro don't work for crap.
It is probably the original Velcro from the 1990s. It is just fuzz rubbing on fuzz at this point.
Today's deep dive is super interesting. We aren't looking at some glossy, retouched brochure from Amtrak.
Your marketing material today.
Right, and we aren't looking at a carefully curated Instagram influencer who got comped a free luxury trip either. We are looking at the raw footage of the reality. We are breaking down a journey documented by a couple, Rick and KJ. Their YouTube channel is Wanda Rick. They took an Amtrak sleeper car all the way from Atlanta to Philadelphia.
Which is a really significant route. That is the Crescent Line.
Spot on. It's an overnight trip, and it departs at the absolutely ungodly hour of 11:10 p.m. And what I really love about this source is that it acts as this perfect counter-narrative to all the shiny marketing. It's gritty, it is extremely cramped, and yet by the end of it, they come to a conclusion that completely surprised me.
So let us get right into it. The source material begins with immediate, palpable stress. They are boarding the train. And if you have ever boarded a long-distance train with more than a backpack, you know exactly this feeling. The audio starts, and they are already in the thick of it.
That whole toilet in the room thing tells us exactly what kind of equipment they are riding on.
Right, but before they can even process the whole toilet situation, the panic sets in. It is the luggage. Listen, I do not care who you are. When you walk into an Amtrak Roomette for the first time, your brain does this really harsh calculation. But if you go into it expecting an adventure in a mechanical capsule, you might actually just love it.
Well, let's talk about that capsule for a second, because the very first thing that hits you in their video, and I mean it literally hits you hard, is the spatial reality of the train.
Those corridors are designed for one average-sized person to walk through efficiently.
It got so bad that just to let the conductor pass by, KJ had to actually retreat into the room and sit down on the bottom bunk. And Rick had to stand in the only remaining square foot of floor space inside the roomette. It was like watching someone play a sliding puzzle game. You know, the ones where you have to move one tile just to free up space to move the other one?
Exactly. And that is the first major lesson of this deep dive for you guys listening. The train does not adapt to you. You have to adapt to the train. Train attendant, who they noted was very cordial, by the way, which is crucial because a bad attendant can completely ruin a trip. But he ends up taking the bag to store it elsewhere in the car.
Right.
But just think about the psychology of that start. You were just boarded, it is super late, you were exhausted, and your first 10 minutes are just this high-stress game of luggage Tetris.
All right, let's see.
Rick actually tries to show the breakfast menu to the camera. He is using this DJI Osmo Pocket 3 camera, which usually gives really great crisp footage. But he has a bit of a production oopsie here. The shot of the menu is completely blurry. You can't read a single word of it.
Which I actually really appreciated. It added so much to the authenticity of the vlog. They aren't some hyper-polished travel channel with a massive production crew. They're just two normal people figuring this stuff out on the fly. But he does make sure to note that the food selection is actually really decent.
We just gotta get settled down right now.
Speaking of the roomette itself, though, we really have to address the elephant in the room. Or rather, the toilet in the room. And the reveal in the video is hilarious because at first, you don't even see the toilet.
Why?
Because there's a giant nylon roller bag just sitting right on top of it.
It is the luggage shelf that doubles as commode. It is efficient, sure, but it completely strips away any illusion of luxury you might have been hanging on to.
Rick actually puts up a subtitle on the video explicitly saying he was specifically hoping not to get this exact layout. But they walk in and KJ says, "We've got a toilet." And she doesn't mean there's a private little bathroom behind a closed door. She means it is right there, next to the bed.
It's an open concept bathroom, which is a phrase that honestly should never exist in interior design.
Open concept bathroom. That is terrifying. And the reveal in the video is hilarious because at first, you don't even see the toilet.
Why?
Because there's a giant nylon roller bag just sitting right on top of it.
And this leads to my absolute favorite interaction in the entire source tape. They're shoving bags around, tensions are running high, it is hot, which we will definitely get to, and the woman is refusing to let go of a specific bag. She wants it close to her. And the man, in this incredibly dry, deadpan voice, asks her,
Is it just a lack of trust issues that you have?
Huh?
Is it just your lack of trust issues?
Yes.
That's all it is. It's not like there's actually anything in there you need.
No, I can shift this around so it ain't all in your face. See, look what I did.
Is it just the lack of trust issues that you have?
It's such a candid moment.
It is hilarious. He even doubles down. He says, is it just your lack of trust issues? It is not like there is actually anything in there unique. It feels like a very real marriage moment. They are not performing for the camera at all. They are just a husband and wife annoyed with each other in a ridiculously small space.
Well, the confined space of a roomette acts like a pressure cooker. It amplifies whatever dynamic is already happening there. If you are stressed, you're going to be way more stressed. If you are playful, it can be fun.
I know where you going.
Sit down first. I need to get rid of at least one of these bags. Can you help me with that?
Where you have to?
Philadelphia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which one do you want to get?
Oh, mine?
Is that her?
Yes.
Yeah, I can check it.
Okay. Babe, do you have time to look at the breakfast?
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, take a look at it. I'll be right back.
Okay.
We're getting
Got your
breakfast?
bag all set.
Yeah.
Situated. You're all set.
Ordering it for the morning.
Oh, I see. And they bring it to us?
Yep. No, we can go to the dining
Everything's
car.
all pre-made, unfortunately, in here.
I'm sorry.
So ain't no chef. Where's the menu again?
And we've got the breakfast. Okay. And I have Greek yogurt, strawberry yogurt.
No, the door starts slamming. All right, you too.
I'll leave them right there so I can get them. Yeah.
Well, how you gonna step down?
I mean, I'll put them on before I slip down. No, leave them there.
You want to put them up there? Put them on top of the light.
Huh?
You put one right on top of that light, it might fall off. Never mind. You got enough space up there?
I guess you can put your cell phone in there or something.
Yeah.
I do. I think I'm gonna take off my socks.
All right. If you want me to close the door and
You get in here and let those. Don't get my toes.
I can cut out whatever.
Okay.
Let's see what we got here. Let's see. So it goes there. That's the latch. Pull that up. And these attach. Well, actually, that one just goes. Just goes like so, right? Yeah, I'll work on it here. That's it. It's a dingy old thing, ain't it? I can barely hear you.
Well, he doesn't mince words. He
Yeah.
says, it's a dingy old thing, ain't it?
He is reacting to decades of deferred maintenance. These specific train cars have been in active service for a very long time. They've seen millions of miles, and you really see it in the detail.
The train finally starts moving, and the sliding door to the hallway just slowly slides wide open all on its own.
And somehow the door came open.
That is the adventure part creeping in. You are actively fighting the mechanics of the room. It is not passive travel like an airplane where you just sit in your assigned seat and stare at a little screen. You are actively managing your environment. You are securing the sliding door. You are fixing the worn out curtain.
This Velcro don't work for crap.
It is probably the original Velcro from the 1990s. It is just fuzz rubbing on fuzz at this point. There is zero stick left.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like a super minor gripe, but when you are trying to create a private, safe sanctuary for the night, those little mechanical failures really chip away at the whole experience. You are literally holding your privacy together with hope.
Pour it down. That's how that would work.
So we have the bags, the open concept toilet, the bad Velcro, and the haunted sliding door. Then comes the sensory overload. Rick makes a really interesting observation about the sound in the car. He says the room, quote-unquote, absorbs sound, which implies it's quiet inside, but the train itself is just roaring.
It is a very specific acoustic environment. You have this dead, muffled silence inside the cabin because of all the heavy upholstery in the small space, but directly underneath you, you have heavy steel wheels on steel rails just screaming. It's a dissonance that some people actually find incredibly soothing, you know, the rhythmic clack-clack, and others find it completely maddening.
Now look now. Don't turn the AC on. I can't tell what is on. Can you tell?
It says 60.
Oh, that ain't true.
That ain't true.
It is definitely hot in here. You know what? I need to take off some stuff.
And then there's the temperature. This is my absolute nightmare when traveling. KJ looks at the wall thermostat and claims it says 16 degrees. But Rick is visibly sweating. He's actively stripping off layers of clothing, saying, that ain't true. It is definitely hot in here.
Climate control in these older sleeper cars is notoriously binary. It is either the frozen Arctic or the absolute Sahara. It sounds like they definitely got the sauna treatment that night. And you really don't have a lot of control over it. You can turn the little knob, but the system pretty much decides what it wants to do regardless.
So unsurprisingly, given the heat, the loud track noise, and the sheer strangeness of sleeping next to a toilet, we cut to a shot of Rick's cell phone screen in pitch blackness. And it reads 4:15 a.m.
The universal symbol of a rough night of travel.
In the morning debrief, Rick totally admits it. When KJ asks if he slept, he just says, not really. He mentions that the physical movement of the train would jolt him awake every single time they hit a rough patch of track. KJ apparently slept a little bit better, but this was clearly not a restful night at the Ritz.
It rarely is on the first night. You really have to get your train legs, so to speak. Your
And did you sleep all night?
Not really, but I slept.
Yeah.
The train would wake you up sometimes. It would have been better sitting in a chair. No?
Probably.
I thought the same thing.
They leave that dingy roomette and walk down to the dining car. And the way Rick films this part, it is like they are entering a completely different world. Shifts.
This is the great redemption arc of train travel. Morning on a train is a superpower.
He describes the dining car as having this elegant charm. You've got these big, gorgeous windows, lots of natural light pouring in, crisp tablecloths. It feels entirely distinct from the rest of the train.
The dining car is the community hub. It is honestly the reason you tolerate the roomette in the first place. When you sit down there, you aren't crammed in a closet anymore. You are in a moving, functioning restaurant. It totally recontextualizes the entire journey from an endurance test to a real experience. It is certainly not gourmet cooking, it is mass-produced food. But it is hot, it is substantial, and honestly, when you are sitting there watching beautiful snow-covered fields roll by the window. A hotel omelet tastes absolutely.
John was saying that she asked me, were you still doing background? I'm like, yeah, he's still doing background. And I said, he's mostly, his main scene is the country club, you know, aside from the wedding. You know, that was what, and I said, they recorded way past Easter now. So I was like, he's still on there. And she said, yeah, I just keep seeing that tall that guy with the like, gray hair. Like, yeah, everybody, he's very distinguishable. Like, everybody recognizes him.
They stop in Lynchburg, Virginia, and just watching the regular people out on the platform going about their day is interesting. But then they hit the rural areas. Rick calls it puzzle imagery.
That is such a great phrase, puzzle imagery.
Yeah, he is filming these untouched snowy fields, the tall grass, the quiet hidden parts of America that you just simply do not see when you're driving on the interstate.
That is the big insight right there. When you fly, you basically leave point A and teleport to point B. You look out the window and you see clouds. When you drive, you see concrete highway barriers, billboards, and gas stations. But when you take the train, you actually see the backyard of the country. You see the rivers and the deep woods.
They capture that feeling perfectly with the water crossings. They cross a bridge, and you see these little boats right below you on the water. You feel physically connected to the geography of the trip. And then, as they finally approach D.C., you see the Washington Monument standing tall, right from the dining car window. You see the big station sign. You really feel the physical distance you have traveled.
That is a very powerful visual for a traveler. Seeing the monument from the ground level, slowly approaching the Capitol like that, it feels grand, it feels historic.
Rick is already tracking their progress on his phone, too. He's got Google Maps open, just watching the little blue dot slowly move across the map.
Which is a huge perk of taking the train. You have cell service and connectivity. You can look out the window, see a cool river, look down at your phone and say, oh wow, that's the Schuylkill River. It engages you with the trip in a way that being stuck in airplane mode at 30,000 feet just doesn't. You aren't cut off from the world, you are actively watching the world happen.
They finally arrive at their destination in Philadelphia, the William H. Gray, the 3rd 30th Street station. And Rick is incredibly impressed. He talks about the architecture of the building, the sheer grandeur of it. He says it's striking.
And that is the final major pro for rail travel. You arrive directly in the city center. You aren't landing 45 minutes out in the suburbs and then taking a crowded shuttle bus to a rental car center. You step right off the train into a beautiful historic hall, and you are downtown. This is what we call a walk-off city experience. You literally walk off the train, and you are there. Try doing that at Hartsfield-Jackson down in Atlanta.
Yeah, you definitely cannot just walk off into the city from the Atlanta airport. So let's look at the final scoreboard here. On the negative side, we have claustrophobia, a nylon bag resting on a toilet, totally non-functional Velcro, a 60-degree sauna, and a mostly sleepless night. On the positive side, we have gorgeous scenery, a decent oversized omelet, and a super convenient downtown arrival.
When you stack it up side by side like that, the math looks pretty bad for the train.
It really does. But then they put up this final text on the screen at the end of the video, and this is what I really want to unpack for a second. They conclude with the phrase, Amtrak First Class above all else.
It is a very bold statement to make after that night.
It's shocking. How do you possibly go from calling it a dingy old thing to saying it's above all else?
I think it really comes down to the complete absence of active stress. Think about the alternative ways to make that exact trip from Atlanta to Philly, if they chose to drive. That is 12, maybe 14 hours of pure white-knuckle driving on I-95. You are dealing with awful traffic, endless construction zones, and severe exhaustion. You have to be fully on and alert the entire time.
That's true. You are actively fighting the road for 14 hours.
And if they flew, it's the miserable TSA lines. It's taking your shoes off and unpacking your laptop. It's the anxious scramble to board before the overhead bins fill up. It's being squeezed into a tiny middle seat where you can't even move your knees. It is the overwhelming stress of the process. You're constantly being herded like cattle.
And on the train, once they finally solved that initial luggage puzzle, they were basically just hanging out.
Exactly. Even when the haunted door slid open, they just laughed about it. Even when the room was overly hot, they just hung out and dealt with it. It is forced downtime. You are actively moving towards your destination, but you aren't required to actually do anything. And for a married couple like Rick and KJ, that uninterrupted time together, eating breakfast, watching the snow fall, laughing about bag trust issues, that is where the real value is.
It's an experience, not just a mode of transportation.
Precisely. And Rick specifically makes sure to point out the clean restrooms in first class, which are apparently much, much better than the ones back in coach. And just the general positive vibe of the station. They genuinely felt taken care of despite the grit and the age of the cars.
It seems to me like their attitude was the most critical piece of gear they brought with them. Because if you approach that exact same trip with a super rigid mindset, demanding absolute perfection, you would hate every second of it. But they just rolled with the punches.
Wanderick's video is honestly almost a public service because it sets the bar at the exact correct height for new travelers. Expect the track noise. Expect the worn-out interior. If you just accept that as part of the quote-unquote charm, you can actually sit back and enjoy the view. If you try to fight it, you will lose.
I also really liked how helpful Rick tried to be with the production of the vlog. He used these manually inserted text subtitles to explain things to the viewer. Like halfway through, he pans the camera up to the ceiling and realizes there's actually storage up there.
Showing that cubby to the audience is a huge tip. If they had known that getting on, all that boarding chaos might have been completely avoided.
That is the real deep dive nugget right there. Just look up.
Always look up when you get in a sleeper car.
So, looking comprehensively at this specific route and their experience, would you actually recommend it?
I would. I really would. But with some major caveats. If you are traveling as a couple, make absolutely sure you really, really like each other because you are going to be in each other's personal space in a very literal, unavoidable way. And pack light. Like much lighter than you think you need to. Do not bring the massive hard shell roller bag. It will end up sitting on your toilet.
And maybe bring a roll of duct tape for the bad curtains.
Duct tape, some good earplugs, and a comfortable eye mask. That is the holy trinity of sleeper car travel right there. But yes, arriving in Philly, fully fed and caffeinated, watching the city skyline slowly approach from your window, it absolutely beats the highway every single time.
You know, despite the dingy review, I think I'm actually sold on it. There's just something about that puzzle imagery of the snow that gets me. We live in such a rush all the time. We are completely obsessed with efficiency. Getting there right now.
We treat travel as dead time. Just something unpleasant to get over with. We try to compress it as much as possible.
Exactly. But looking at Rick and KJ, the travel itself was the event. Sure, it was flawed. Sure, the Velcro was shot. But it was highly memorable. Nobody tells a fun story about their completely standard 2-hour flight to Philadelphia unless the engine fell off or they lost all their luggage.
That is very true. You are buying a story. You're not just buying a ticket. And you are buying a proper transition. You arrive at your destination feeling like you have actually traveled across the country, not just teleported through the sky.
So that is the main question we want to leave you guys with today. In a world of high-speed everything, would you be willing to trade the absolute efficiency of a flight and the sheer misery of the airport for a sleepless night in a 1990s closet? Just for the chance to see the country wake up over breakfast. Is the struggle of the Roomette actually part of the charm?
It is definitely something to sit and think about next time you are standing in a crowded TSA line holding your belt and your shoes.
Huge thanks to Rick and KJ from Wanderick for taking us along on that crazy journey. If you want to see those snowy fields and the infamous toilet luggage situation for yourself, definitely go check out their video. Till next time, keep exploring.
Safe travels, everyone.
Chugga chugga.